Hey there, folks. Jeremy with the Seeds of Liberty podcast here. Gonna attempt to start up a new little project, tentatively called Abolitionist Abstractions. I will apologize in advance for the bounciness of the video quality and my possible shortness of breath, as I believe we've touched on briefly in the podcast before. I run a pet sitting company here on Long Island, so I spend a lot of time out walking different neighborhoods, and that's what I'm doing right now. But it gives me a perfect opportunity to see a lot of everyday government things in action that most people don't even pay attention to, or they just accept it as, how things work, so they don't question it. I'm going to show a picture right now. This right here is what our first little episode is going to be about today. This is intended to be, my little ramblings, but based on the thoughts I've had already, most of these are probably going to tend towards being pointing out government hypocrisy. So for today, with that little pic I just showed you of the busted up sidewalk, I would like to talk about the differences in how agents of the governments are allowed to do certain things that the average citizen is not. This ties into one of our previous Seeds of Liberty podcasts and the belief in authority. So for instance, that little area of the sidewalk I just showed you, today is Thursday. I walk in this neighborhood Monday through Fridays. Last Friday I was in this neighborhood and that piece of sidewalk was not ripped up. Now we're going to come across a few others as we go on this walk that I will show you also that are also ripped up. So as I said, last Friday none of them were ripped up. When I returned on Tuesday, because the owner of this particular dog had Monday off, but when I returned Tuesday, I found all these sections ripped up and sectioned off, and no workers, no government agents, no contractors doing any work, just completely ripped up and sectioned off. Now, today, as I said, is Thursday, and as you saw from that first shot, still ripped up, still nobody has worked on it, still sectioned off and unavailable for the quote-unquote public to use. Now this is where the hypocrisy comes in. Myself, friends of mine, family members, over the course of living here on Long Island, have in the past received summons, tickets, potential fines for parking in our own driveways and having the car stick out just a little bit to where it blocks the sidewalk. We are given these tickets, summons, fines, whatnot, based on the idea that we are inconveniencing the public so that they cannot walk down the sidewalk, uninterfered with. Basically, they're most concerned with people who, maybe pushing a baby carriage or pushing a shopping cart or in a wheelchair, and they say that we are an inconvenience to them, so we must be punished. Now, on some level, this makes sense, as, it's unfortunately living in the status paradigm. These features, like sidewalks, are considered public property, which we know to mean government property. So they like to set the rules. So from a convenience aspect, this does make a little bit of sense. However, while the average citizen will be punished for taking up a small section of the sidewalk, mainly the point in front of their own driveway, agents of the government are allowed to come in, tear up an entire section of a sidewalk, presumably to have, work done to improve the quality, but they're allowed to do that and then leave it there for days, and nothing happens to them. Now, many people will assume this just to be, how business is done. Things happen. Maybe they started the project and something major came up and they couldn't finish it. But they never bother to think why we should be punished for doing something somewhat similar, but ours is only temporary, because the majority of the time when this happens is if you've parked overnight. And, like for instance, I have a driveway that can technically fit, I believe, about 4 cars, 4 full-size cars, and 5 if we really squeeze it in, and then somebody would have to be hanging over the sidewalk a little bit. Now, there's been situations where we've gotten, friends of mine have gotten tickets at my house for this very act, and it was overnight. And I don't know about you, but I don't know too many people who are pushing baby carriages, shopping carts, or wheelchairs down the sidewalk in the middle of the night. But the agents of government can do these things and leave them for days on end, but that's the price of doing business in their mind. What this boils down to is hypocrisy. Do as I say, not as I do, which again stems from the belief in authority, and most people won't even question it. People like myself will. And I have in the past, and will continue to do so, actually use that very argument as a basis for defense if I do receive such a ticket. Now, unfortunately, it never usually pans out, because the judge in the case is on the same payroll as the law enforcement officer who gave me the ticket in the first place. And as most of us know all too well, when you play for the same team, conflict of interest necessarily arise, and that's what happens. They police themselves. Story of pretty much every government action. Something goes wrong, another entity from government looks into the first entity of government and declares, we've done nothing wrong, we're in the clear. And there's not much anybody can say about it, because most people will blindly accept this as fact. These things are minor annoyances to people, so they don't really think too long and hard about it. But for somebody like me, who wanders these neighborhoods on a daily basis as part of my job, I see them firsthand, and they really make me scratch my head. And I wonder why other people are not as concerned as I am.
They're so cute.
So, I think we may be coming up to another one of these areas shortly. This also ties into another bit of hypocrisy by the government, wherein, especially here on Long Island, which I will usually speak about when I do these videos, because that's where I am, that's where I spend the bulk of my time, so that's what I know the most about. Here on Long Island, these sidewalks that we are discussing, it's a funny thing. If you look at your land deed, which I have one because I am a quote-unquote homeowner, the demarcation lines for where my property ends and where where my neighbor's property begins and where the quote-unquote public property begins will show that, from the street to my back fence and from my side fence to my side fence is all allegedly my property. However, it is commonly accepted, and by accepted I mean people non-thinkingly accepting these premises because, well, the government said so. It is generally accepted that the sidewalk is public property, and because that public property actually runs through, I'll actually show you here, for instance, you see there's the road, there's a little patch of grass, here's the sidewalk, and here's somebody's lawn. So that patch of grass, while technically is on your land deed and is alleged to be yours, doesn't actually belong to you insofar as the town is concerned, or most people, unfortunately. It is readily accepted that because the sidewalk is considered public, see government property, that the section between the sidewalk and the road is actually also town property. Now, the funny thing about this is, it says on your deed that it's your property. The town contends that it's their property. But by their property, it means that they can come in and do whatever they want to it. You know, installing street signs, replacing street lights, moving power lines around, what have you. But any maintenance that has to be done to the quote-unquote public sidewalk actually ends up falling on you. The individual who allegedly owns the property where the sidewalk passes through is responsible for replacing these things. Now that seems kind of odd. I can't find a definition of ownership that fits into. That something that you own, but you don't actually have control of, but you're required to pay for, but on top of all that, you also can't make any alterations. Now, I've tested this theory out. I actually tried doing a little guerrilla gardening directly in front of my house, you know, where I planted some seeds years ago, just to see what would grow. And the town actually came in and told me I could not grow vegetables in front of my house on what is, according to the land deed, my property. So the question is, how do you own something that you don't have a right to do whatever you want with, as long as it is not negatively affecting someone else, or, sorry, should I say aggressing against someone else, but you're still responsible for paying for quote-unquote damages that occur to it? That is government in action. And actually, here we come to another stretch. I'll show you guys. This whole stretch of sidewalk, the entire length of somebody's house, or property, actually, is another one. Like I said, I was here last Friday. All the sidewalks were in one piece. I came back on Tuesday. They had already been sectioned off and ripped apart. I'm assuming that happened on Monday. And now here we are on Thursday. And I've been here the past 3 days, and I have yet to see a single worker in any of these locations. So the bottom line is that government gets to do whatever it wants and expects very little in the way of resistance because, well, most people fall for the appeal to antiquity. This is the way it's been. This is the way it'll always be. There's no sense in questioning it. And where some people will see this as nitpicking, to me, I believe little things like this are more important than most people will give credit for. Because it's like anything else. If you claim to have a principle, but you're willing to put it aside in order to get something else beneficial, you don't really have that principle. because wishy-washiness and principles do not go together. So, to me, the principle that government does whatever it wants, whenever it wants, and gets away with it based only on the illogical belief in authority is important to me. So I will point things like this out in hopes that other people will take recognition and start to question exactly why it is we allow the government to get away with these little things that they will punish us for doing something very similar. That can also get into the whole discussion about revenue generation, which is a popular tactic of all governments. That's how they survive. They have to find ways to generate revenue since they don't have their own. But that's a topic for another video. So I just wanted to point this out. Like I said, hopefully this is going to start to be another little series that our burgeoning network puts out. So thanks again for watching. This is Jeremy from the Seeds of Liberty podcast. And this was Abolitionist Abstractions. Peace.